Hey, welcome. Good to see you all here and so enthusiastic about our next webinar, making decisions during the proposal development phase. My name is Merel. I work at Han Valk Consultancy. I started here at the beginning of this year when I just moved back from living in Latin America for 2.5 years. And it's a very short introduction about me. So Han.
Yeah, welcome everyone. My name is Han Valk. I see that a few of you participated already in a few other webinars, so nice to see you again. For those of you who do not know me, I'm a fundraiser by profession. I've been working as a fundraiser for a few NGOs over the past 15 years or so, and 5 years ago I started a fundraising consultancy company called HVFC. Currently we work with a nice team of some 16, 17 people from 2 offices in Gouda, where I'm currently based, and from Washington DC, and we help nonprofits in improving their results. So we focus a lot on fundraising, of course, on more the programmatic side of the organization, monitoring, evaluation kind of services we do, and recruitment. And I'm very excited about today, because today we're going to talk about a topic that is often neglected in fundraising, but extremely important. We are going to talk about the topic of decision making, and especially in the proposal development phase. But we will come back to that in a bit.
Before we can start, you can see that on the right-hand side of your screen you have a chat, and we ask you if you have any questions during this webinar, you can post them here, and we can hopefully answer them, depending a bit on the time, but we will do our best to do so. And of course, this is part of a different webinars we've been hosting. The next one will be on negotiations with partners and donors. This one we already did last week, if I'm not mistaken, but there were so many people who wanted to participate that we decided to open a next round to not disappoint too many. But we also have other webinars coming up on impact, negotiations, this one, and we have our Q&As with Han, where he answers questions on fundraising. So in case we're not able to answer your questions today, Han will probably be able to do so in those Q&A sessions. And we also have new webinars coming up that are not posted yet on the website, so keep tracking them if you're interested. And last but not least, we will have a surprise at the end of this webinar for you. But I think
like most webinars, yeah. Yeah, and we are, of course, extremely interested who you are today. So we have a quick poll to ask you who you are and where you're from, so we get to know each other a little bit. So if you can look at the poll and scroll down, you can answer a few questions. We're interested, of course, to know where you're from and what you normally do in your job, and a little bit about your organization, but also on how important decision making is currently at your organization. So does it really help you to increase the quality of your proposals that you submit, or maybe it is something that you just have to do and it creates mainly delay and confusion at your organization. Let's just see where you're all at. I give you like 15 more seconds to answer, and then I will close the voting. So a few more answers are dropping in, I see. 5 more seconds. Last moment to vote. Okay, so let's see who's here. I think you can all see the results. Mainly European and few from North America. So that's nice. Last time we also had a few people from Africa and Asia, but yeah, this is a European party mainly. So might have to do with the topic. a lot of fundraising people, some management people here as well. So great. We see quite a variety again in the types of organizations, ranging from relatively small, so not even 1 million turnover per year, to over 100 million. So that is really nice. I'm curious to see if that makes any difference in the decision-making process that you have. And I see that Catalina says, "I cannot hear you anymore." We learned from previous participants that sometimes it helps to log out and log in again, because your computer might not recognize us anymore. But maybe that's a good solution. Or open in a different browser. That sometimes helps. And well, we see that actually how you do decision-making processes in your proposal development, complicated sentence, by the way, but it's actually working quite well for most of you. So that is good to see. But let's see if we can even do better after this webinar. Yeah. So thanks for that. So we know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, well, let's start then. What do we actually talk about when we talk about decision making during the development of proposals?
Yeah, so I've mentioned already in previous webinars, but proposal development is like the last stage, of course, of your whole fundraising strategy. You've worked on a relationship with the donor and you prepared, and all of a sudden you can start writing something down and submit it to the donor. And that can be because you're invited, or you feel like submitting a proposal is the good timing, or there's like the standard procedure. It doesn't matter so much on your starting point, but this is the moment that you bring together your team and start typing up your proposal. And this is a very crucial step because writing a proposal is extremely expensive. We calculated that the average proposal to write is about 40 to 50,000 euros. So that includes your time, consultants, travel. We've seen many proposals that were actually 10 times bigger in cost. Sometimes it's a little bit cheaper, but it's a very costly affairs. There is a lot of funding involved as well, so it's when you write a proposal, you sometimes get millions for your organization, sometimes even more than that, and so you need to make sure that you get the money in the right way, and it's a long-term commitment that you often engage with the donors, sometimes 4 or 5 years. So it's a very crucial step. And so when we talk about decision making, we talk about the whole process to make sure that the commitments you make with the donor, that they are based on what the organization actually wants. The contract that you negotiate with the contractor made based on the decisions that you actually want. But also we need to make sure that you don't waste any resources. Writing a proposal is expensive, so it's a very important situation that your organization makes the right decisions along the way. And today I want to talk to you about 3 bottlenecks that we often see. So the what, who, and when. So we will go through all of that. But what is focusing mainly on how do we make our decisions? Based on what indicators or what criteria do we make our decisions? The who, of course, is who makes the decisions in the organizations. And when has to do, of course, with the timing in the proposal development phase. Often you don't have a lot of time. You have a few weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks or so to develop a proposal. So the timing of your decision making is crucial to do this in a very efficient way.
Yeah. Sad to hear that, to see that Catalina still wasn't able to hear us. I hope no one else has a problem hearing. If you do, please let us know. But let's examine what you just talked about, Han. Maybe the participants would like to write down in some keywords what you believe that the decision making, or how the decision making is done in your organization.
So mainly on the what, so how do you, based on what do you make decisions in your organization?
Sorry, that wasn't
Yeah.
formulated. But yeah, based on what do you make a decision for a proposal in your organization?
See that someone is already typing, so that's great. Strategic orientation. So is there a connection between what your organization wants to achieve and what the donor is looking for? I think that Lydia's mentioning that. And if this is the Lydia who I think it is, good to see you again, Lydia. I think you guessed right. Yeah. Okay, so some others are discussing as well. So typing up a few things, but let's just continue, and then yeah, we will include how you make your decisions in the next discussion. Yeah.
Okay, Han. Yeah, maybe we can go back to those bottlenecks you mentioned. You based on what do organizations make their decisions? And because I believe often an organization decides to, okay, if it follows up with my strategy and the money is good, you automatically do a proposal. So what are the documents we're talking about?
Yeah. So this is something we see a lot. So organizations, they spot an opportunity, and yeah, they think there is a good match between what the donor is looking for and what the organization wants to achieve, and then they look mainly at the financial opportunities. So you have a dream, you need 5 million to realize it, and you see that there is a call for 5 million. And yeah, often based on that, only decisions are being made. And yeah, that's a big risk because yeah, those are two important indicators to look into, but that's not the whole picture. So I've made a list of 10. So this is maybe a long sending of me. So hang in there. I try to keep it short, but at least 10 things are, I think, important to explore when you make a decision if this is an interesting opportunity for us as an organization or not. So the first one is, of course, what you already mentioned, Lydia. So there needs to be a strategic match between what the donor is looking for and what we want to do as an organization. And in that, I think it's very important to not only look from our organization's perspective, is there a match? Can we sell this to the donor? But also look from the donor's perspective. If you look at the call or the opportunity, is the donor actually looking for what we want to propose to the donor? And this is, of course, something that is in most of the decision-making processes in the organization we work with already there. So that should not be the biggest problem. So the financial potential is very important, and also that is often obvious. Yeah, I gave the example: this organization needs 5 million, and then there is this goal for 5 million. So yes, there seems to be a good potential there, but very important to include your finance department in this decision, because you need to go a bit more deeper into what you can actually fund through the requirements of the donor, what you cannot fund, what the limitations are, restrictions are, to see the full financial potential of this donor. Because we've seen many examples of where an NGO got funding from a donor, and it turned out that not all the costs were eligible. And that means you have a commitment with the donor to execute a big project for a few years. And you then need to fund all the non-eligible costs. So it's very important to look also at the financial potential of the organization. So all of it, not only the lump sum of the funding, but actually what can we cover, and can we cover all of the costs in the project. The donor relationship is extremely important. As we mentioned many times, for those of you who follow our webinars or have worked with us, the relationship with the donor is key when you submit a proposal to the donor. They need to know you need to know them, and trust needs to be there. So it's important that you also take that into your consideration. If it's a relatively new donor to you, it's very difficult to write a winning proposal simply because you're competing with organizations that know the donor a lot better, which helps in the evaluation. They don't know the donor language a lot better. They know how to present the proposal to the donor in the right way. So yeah, it's important to not only submit proposals that look good, but also that come out of your pipeline of opportunities where you start with selecting the right donors and engage with them. So the better you know them, the better it is. Preparedness is also extremely important. I've worked with organizations that had as a rule of thumb, they won't submit proposals unless they knew of the call around a year before it was actually published. And why? Because they need about a year to prepare the whole proposal development phase. We also have clients that come to us and they say, well, we went to the EU website or to grants.gov, where you see the opportunities of the US government, for example, listed. And we spotted this opportunity and we have 3 weeks left. What do you think? Shall we go for it or not? Well, if you have 3 weeks left or a few months for these big proposals, you probably don't have enough time to develop this whole winning concept, to negotiate deals with partners, to bring the whole team together. It's probably going to be one big compromise, and it's not going to win. So you need to be extremely prepared, and that is something you need to take into consideration when you make a decision. Were we prepared enough? Or competitive advantage, or you can also replace this word maybe with track record. Do we have the experience to show to the donor that we are the ones that bring in this USP that is going to make a big difference? Especially for tender procedures where you see many organizations bid for the same donor, it is extremely important to know that what we think is an advantage or USP or unique selling point is actually a unique selling point for the donors, and we need to be extremely critical here. Because if we submit a proposal and the donor gets like 10 similar kind of proposals, again, it's very difficult to show to the donor that we are the ones that can win. So yeah, not only do we have a track record or this unique new intervention, but are we well positioned in the large landscape? So someone needs to check that. Qualifications and experience, and this also has to do, of course, with your track record, but also with the staff of your team. So we'll not go too much in detail on this one, but not only do we need to submit something that is ticking all the boxes, but it needs to be a little bit more than that to make sure that we score some extra points, and also that needs to be checked. This is always a big fight between the fundraising department, the business development department, and the program department, your implementation capacity. Fundraisers or business developers, they want to sell a dream, and well, I'm guilty of this as well. I often think as soon as the budget is being covered, we can implement, but reality shows that it's not always as easy as that. You cannot be a small organization and manage all of a sudden this enormous project. You will create a lot of problems there. So it's very important to, when you work on a proposal, not only look, can we do it on paper, but can we also do it in practice, in reality? And this is something which is extremely difficult because not always there are good opportunities, of course. And then you see this good opportunity, it's very easy to think, okay, let's just get the contract and then we see later. But keep in mind, it is a contract between you and the donor. So if you don't implement well, you create many problems, financial problems, motivation problems, but also on your impact level. You want to create the biggest impact possible, of course, to realize your dreams. Also there, you're going to lose it. So, and that is the whole reason you exist, of course. So this is an extremely important one. in tender procedures mainly, but also with other donors, you see that not only what you do is important, but also how much it costs. So they will look at your interventions and see, do we get the best value for money if we put our $1 in your project, or do we get greater value for money if we put our $1 in another project? So pricing sensitivity is extremely important to some donors, not to all. So it's important to look into that. So how many points do we score if we are extremely cheap compared to how many points do we lose if we are quite expensive? And here we see, especially for Western NGOs, often a problem when they are competing with local organizations. The costs in Europe, for example, are of course higher than in some other countries. And if the donor gives you extra points for a lower price, then it's very difficult being a Western organization to with high pricing to score these extra points. So it's important to see if you can get extra points for your budgeting, for your pricing, and if so, maybe this is not the way forward for you. Well, the odds of winning or your expected success rate is, of course, very important. This is a combination of maybe many of the things I mentioned already, but it's a combination, of course, of your track record, of your proposal team quality, but also of the competition that you might expect or might not expect. So it's extremely important to have a bit of an idea of are we talking about a few percent, or is this like do we almost have a deal already and we just have to put it on paper? And the last thing is the cost to respond. The last thing in my overview, you can of course add things, but the cost to respond. And I already mentioned that in our case, we see that the average cost to write a proposal is 40 to 50,000 euros, but sometimes it's a lot more. And it's important to know this, especially in combination with point 9, the expected success rate, because here we can see if writing the proposal is actually the best investment possible. If we think the odds of winning are quite low and the investments are quite high, it should be, of course, a no-go to invest in this. But these 10 indicators we normally advise organizations to at least look into before they make this decision to submit a proposal. And and I think most organizations mainly look at the first two, strategic match and the total amount of funding they might get. You're muted, Milo.
I'm sorry for that. Can you?
No problem.
I was off. Sorry for that. Han, are you still there with your camera? I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I was just wondering, like, with those 10 steps, are you there yet? Then how does that work?
Yeah, so it's not always that you have to follow these 10 steps, and it's. I can imagine that sometimes you only focus on 6, or you want to add a few ones that are very specific for your organizations. So don't take this advice that you should always go to this checklist and then you're done. Always look at the specific situation of your organization, of course, before you make a good decision or not. Sometimes you have like very strategic reasons. Also, we had this experience recently with an organization that has been lobbying towards a donor for almost 2 years, and the donor said, "Well, finally, there you can submit a proposal." And they looked at the goal; it's not really what they were expecting. But because they put so much time into the relationship with the donor, they decided to submit a proposal anyway, not to disappoint their relationship. But it's a very costly way to work on your relationship building. But so there might be different ways on how you make a decision, but make sure you make a decision based on the right indicators. That is the main solution for this bottleneck.
Okay. I believe we have a next poll ready.
Yes, so I mentioned these 10 indicators, and I am curious. So if you look at this, we asked you to write down in the chat earlier based on what you make decisions. But if you hear these 10 indicators, which one do you normally take into consideration when you make a go no-go moment decision? So based on what do you normally say yes, we think this is a good opportunity, and you can select multiple options. So maybe you tick all 10 or maybe a few of those. So very curious to see which ones are popular and which ones are less popular. I give you 15 more seconds to answer it. And I see that someone typed in other. So I'm very curious if you're willing to share in the comments or in the chat what other conditions you take into consideration when you submit when you make a decision to submit a proposal or not. But yeah. So I give you 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. So let's share the results. And it's interesting to see that the first points that I mentioned are most popular. So no surprise here. So there needs to be a strategic match, and the financial potential needs to be there. You do look at track record and can we implement? So that is all very good. Interesting enough, the pricing sensitivity. So how costly are our interventions is not mentioned at all. So that is very interesting. And maybe that depends also per call, and you have a specific call in mind while answering this question where it was less of an issue. But the odds of winning also score extremely low, and that is I think something where you can have a quick win as an organization, because that might result that you submit too many proposals and they all look great from your perspective, but if the donor is going to say no, every time you submit a losing proposal, it's costing your organization quite a lot of money, and that is already here's a quick win to get better results as a business development organization, to try to estimate your odds of winning by looking at your past performance, but also looking at who else is competing with this goal, and also look, for example, at the capacity of your proposal team. But I will come back to that in a bit. But yeah, there are some opportunities here for you.
So let's move to the second that you mentioned. You mentioned something on the role.
The roles, yeah. I won't go too much in detail on this because I saw already that you're all quite experienced in this. So, but I think there are two main things in decision making to mention if we talk about roles. And so one is the proposal team. The proposal team is key. I mentioned it already when I talked about the odds of winning. So your proposal teams, those are the people that are going to develop this winning piece of paper that you submit to the donor, right? So that is often a combination of multiple people. For big proposals, sometimes 15, 20 people are working on one proposal, sometimes even more. For smaller applications, maybe 1 or 2 people are working on it. But it is extremely important to make sure that everyone knows in that group what is expected of them. And you need to make sure that all the necessary roles that you see are represented in your proposal team. And when I talk about all roles, I talk, of course, about someone that can develop the program. That is often a position that is in the proposal team. But you also need someone with monitoring and evaluation experience that can look at your monitoring and evaluation framework. We need someone to check the threshold criteria of the donor if they exist. So do we still have the annual report? Are the salaries not too high of our senior staff, for example, and maybe the donor has like additional threshold criteria on policies you might need to have or so. So it's important that someone checks that. You need, of course, someone to work on the budget. We need maybe some legal staff in it, some communication staff to make sure the whole proposal is designed nicely and edited in the correct way. So all these roles need to be present in your proposal team. And so that is sometimes an issue, that not all the roles are there. A bigger problem, if you ask me, is that too many people are in one proposal team taking on exactly the same role. So you have like 2 program people, for example, that work on a proposal. You have someone that is a thematic expert and someone that brings in the regional expertise or so of this organization, just to give a simple example. And so you have this organization that works on health in Africa. So you have the health experts and someone from the regional office in Africa, and they are both in the proposal team. If it's not well defined at the beginning who is actually end responsible for the content of the proposal, you will get that both of them think that they are responsible, or both of them might think that they're not responsible for this. And what happens is 3 things can happen, which are all bad things. One is that both of them think they're responsible and they enter a huge fight. So that's not good, because that creates a lot of frustration and negative energy, and you lose a whole lot of time out of this. And probably the quality of the proposal is also not going up. Might be that both of them think they're not responsible. They look at the other, so nothing is happening. You have big delays, and also, again, the quality of the proposal is not going up because the content that you need is not delivered in time. It might also be that they start fighting with each other, and they compromise. They come up with a solution that they both can live with. But a compromise solution is often not a winning one in proposal development. It needs to be edgy sometimes to win a proposal. You need to be clearer on what you want to do, and what the results of your proposal are going to be to a donor than your competition. So compromise proposals never work, if you ask me. So it needs to be extremely clear who is end responsible. So one person is responsible for the budget, one person is responsible for M&E, one person is responsible for writing it all down in one narrative. And of course, many people might be supporting that person in getting all the input that you need in time, but one person needs to be end responsible, and that is extremely important. So that's on the proposal development team side. We also see the same thing happening in the management team, because often the management team wants to make final decisions. And also there we see a lot of confusion. So in the management team, not always it's clear who brings in what input for the decision-making process. I just showed you 10 indicators that I would at least advise your organization to look at when they submit a proposal. But what if your finance director starts questioning, should we do the intervention in Kenya or in Uganda? I don't think it's the role of your finance director to ask these questions. Your finance director should look at the financial potential and maybe the pricing sensitivity of your proposal. We see that happening so many times. So it needs to be extremely clear internally in the MT who makes a decision, but also in relationship to the proposal team who makes a decision there. Because nothing is more harmful to your proposal that your proposal team is working on something, and then your program director comes and says, yeah, I don't like it, let me rewrite all of this. And then this person takes on the burden of the work that 15 other people might have worked on before. So that is per definition a bad idea.
Yeah, let's do a quick poll of if people recognize.
Yeah, so let's see here. So this is on the proposal team. I have 2 questions. So let's first focus on the proposal team. So what I just explained to you, that often we see that it's not clear in a proposal team who is actually responsible for what, who is responsible for the overall proposal development, who is responsible for writing, who is responsible for finance. Also meaning what you're not responsible for. So do you recognize that problem in your organization? So is it clear who's responsible for what and who's not. We see it's quite 50-50. People are still answering. Gives you like 10 more seconds. But I can already see the results. It's quite 50-50. I will close the voting and will share it with you. So what you see is that the majority is between clear and unclear. Most say unclear, or half of you say unclear, and that means that a lot of people are involved and they put in so much passion and energy and time, and but if the role is not extremely clear to them, you might have gaps in your proposal team. So or you have people that are feeling responsible for something, and someone else also is responsible for that. So you get create confusion on that. So this is something you definitely need to work on when you start your proposal development phase. So discuss this also in your kickoff meeting with your team. Hi, why are you here, and why are you responsible? Same question, but then on the management level. So how clear is it? I'm not sure if you can answer this question, but in your management team, if your management team is involved in the decision making, and they need to be, of course, how clear are their roles normally? So let's give you a few seconds to answer this question. Might be a bit more difficult because you not always see what is happening in the management team, of course, but okay, so I'll give you a few more seconds to answer this. Okay, let me close the poll and share it with you. And here we see something completely different. So in the proposal team, on average in your organizations, is organized okay, and sometimes even good. But with the management team, you see that there's a lot of unclarity there on the roles of the management team members, and that can create a lot of problems, in the sense that decisions are not taken in the way that they should be taken, and that means you submit either too many proposals, or not the right proposals, or the content of the proposal is actually different than it should be, and meaning that you either have a lower success rate, or you commit yourself to something to the donor, while the organization is actually looking for something else. So this needs to be discussed with your management. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so probably let's continue with the other bottleneck you mentioned in the beginning, and that is on the process of the proposal development.
Yeah. So the process, and that is especially when there is a lot of difficulties with the management team, what we just saw, this process is key. Because what happens a lot is that the management gets involved, and they can say yes or no to the proposal development phase, and that can be sometimes in several situations, and sometimes in just one occasion, and they say yes or no, go or no go. And when it's unclear what they make a decision on and when they make a decision, you probably waste a lot of good opportunities. So before I go into that, I'm just very curious to see how often this happens. So we see that there is quite a lot of unclarity on the role. But if your management says go or no go, then how often do they make that decision? So do they do that once, so at the beginning or at the end of the proposal development, they say yes, you can submit? Or do they have like check-in moments in which they say, okay, we expected you to progress a certain way, and we don't see that result, so we decide later on in the process again if we should submit this proposal. So how often do they actually say go or no go in the best case scenario, of course, for your organization? And this might again be a difficult question if you are not really involved with them, but let's just see what we get. So I'll give you like 15 more seconds to answer this. Okay. We close in 5, 4. Okay. So let's see. So and again, I understand that this is a difficult question maybe to answer, but it is interesting to see, because I expected, and I also see that in the results, that the management, like if you put the whole proposal development process there, what we see is that often they take ad hoc decisions. So yeah, when the time is right, they make a decision. Sometimes one time and sometimes twice. That's the average we see as well, and also here in the results. So that's interesting to see. So if they make one decision or two decisions, that's often really at the beginning. So your team spotted an opportunity, and before you can invest this maybe 30, 40, 50,000 euros in developing a proposal, you need approval from the management. And so they want to see, is this a good opportunity or not? And then they say, yes, go ahead, or no. We don't see this opportunity. Often when this happens, and I'm not sure if you recognize this, but my experience at least is that if you have like one moment to make a decision, every time the decision is being made, it's a yes to the request for the business development team. So the business developers see an opportunity, they ask for approval for the management. Hardly ever the management says, I don't think it's a good opportunity. And why would they? Because they are fed with the information from the business development team. And yeah, if they think it's a good opportunity, then probably it is. 2 times means probably one at the beginning and one in the final stage of the proposal development. So you want to see the final proposal before you actually present or you submit a proposal. And yeah, that's something we see a lot, and that makes sense. And the number of decisions, I think 2 is too little, and you need at least 3 times a check-in from the management. But if you organize it like that, the downside of it is that you often create a very intransparent process, because you already saw in the results of your poll that the roles in the management team are not always very clear. So what then happens is that you don't know the outcome of what is actually happening. You submit your idea to the management team. It's a black box of what is happening there. So it might be a yes, might be a no. We don't know. So that is, of course, not a nice way to work, and especially if you have to check in 3 or 4 times to the management team. So that is definitely a downside of this. Another downside of that is that you lose time often. You have like 6 weeks or 7 weeks to submit a proposal, develop a proposal, and if you need to bring in the whole management team or part of your management team, a core team or so, to make a decision, those people are often extremely busy. They have a lot of priorities, and they can meet like once per week or once every 2 weeks. So to get a go or no go, sometimes you have to wait for a week or 2 weeks before you actually get your result. And so you lose momentum there. And to solve that, you need to have a very transparent situation where your final go or no go is actually predictable. And for that, we have a tool that you see here. And in this, and I will share this tool with you after this webinar as well. You can download it. You get a link after this webinar to download it yourself. This is a simple tool that we have developed that can help organizations to predict the outcome of the go no go moment decision. And so what do you see? You see those 10 indicators, and you can rank the answers depending on where you are. So it might be that you are extremely prepared and your donor contacts are very, very good. But for example, or odds of winning, well, we don't know because we don't know who else is competing, and so our assumption is that there might be a lot of competition just to be on the safe side. And so you score your points, and based on the number of points that you have, you ask approval from your management or not. And in the example I will share with you, we say, okay, you can score 6 points per question times 10 questions, so maximum 60 points. So let's say our organization wants at least 40 points, so 40 out of 60 points when we make a decision to submit a proposal. And that number of points can be different per organization depending on your needs and your availability of staff and many different reasons. But let's say we take that scoring and we want to at least score 40 points. When we ask for a go from the management, we already know how many points we're going to score, so we know the outcome of that decision already. It's their decision, of course, to make, but we can already continue if we know that we score a lot of points, and we also know that we cannot continue if we score only a few points. So you know that. You will also see that when you're filling in this form, that you see quite a lot of question marks. So this pricing sensitivity, for example, just to give an example. Well, maybe we don't know that yet if it's important or not. The guidelines of the donor do not mention anything like that. So our assumption is that it's not a big issue if we're an expensive organization. But it is some homework, and someone in the proposal team needs to focus on that and try to collect that information for us. So we know when we submit the proposal if we're indeed on the good side or we're not on the good side. And these conditions you can delegate to your proposal team. And it means you delegate the responsibility of your go, no go moment decision to your proposal team. And that gives them a lot more ownership and a lot more control of what is happening. And they know where the weak points are, they know where the strong points are, and they can fix it themselves. If they cannot fix it, they also know what the consequence is. We are not going to submit a proposal. And that means that the management team still makes these important decisions, but it's based on the input from the right people in the proposal team. So finance department says about financial issues, and program people about strategic maths and can we implement. So they fill in that part of the sheet. So you know the right people looked at it, and based on that, the management team can make a decision very quickly. In a few minutes, they just look at the scoring, looks extremely promising or doesn't look promising, and based on that, they say yes or no.
Thanks, and I think that's a very useful tool in communication with the management team indeed. Maybe there are some questions from the team at this point. We have some time to answer those.
We didn't get a lot of questions in between, so
not yet
because I talk so much. yeah. So Andrea asked where are such forms available, and well, the good news is, and Amina asked the same thing. Yes, we are going to share this tool with you. So it's a simple PDF, and you will. Oh, here it is. And you can all download it when you exit this webinar. We email it to you. I think you can download it, so you all get it and you can work in it. Keep in mind, this is a tool. It's not a goal per se. So if for your organization, few of those criteria do not make sense and other criteria are more important, please adjust it. And so that is extremely important. Yeah, but I hope this inspires you to work with it. And Albert says, what about the bias of the people that do the scoring? And that is, and that's a very good point. And that of course goes for all decisions that are being made in an organization. I think the bias is less by answering these questions if you ask the right people to do the scoring. And it is having trust in the right people. I think it's always key for an organization to flourish. And the people that need to make the final decision are, of course, the people higher up in the organization, because these are big investments and long-term commitments So of course they are end responsible, but they cannot know all of these the answers to these questions. They are not the ones that are going to check the guidelines of the donor. They are not going to assess if that track record is good enough or not. So they will go back. They need to go back to the people that can answer these questions, and those are the people, yeah, at the right department. So I would say before you actually start filling in this decision matrix as an organization, in your kickoff meeting, discuss also with someone of the management that is there who you think should be the one that needs to fill in these answers. And for those of you who were in our writing winning proposals webinar, you might recall that we explained that apart from a proposal team, you also need a review team. And a review team is a team that double checks pretty much the work and the quality of the proposal team. And also for filling in this decision matrix, you can ask someone that is not involved in the proposal development to check this. So if we say the pricing sensitivity, that we score good on that, that person should be the one that asks the question, okay, based on what did you do this scoring? And do I agree with that? And so that it might help in solving this bias. And for very large proposals, you can even ask multiple people to fill it in, one question, and you take the average scoring of, for example, 2 people, and yeah, it's less biased then. Yeah, good question, Albert.
Yeah, indeed. I see there at this point no further questions in the chat. So I think we're coming to the end of this session. Thank you for joining and sharing your questions and comments with us. If you've liked this webinar, we have, of course, more coming up. Here's a full overview of these sessions. You can also find these on our website. And you'll see a pop-up screen when you exit this webinar where you can already register. So for next Friday, we have a Q&A on fundraising with Han. Here you can ask him any question on fundraising you have, either on today's topic or any other topic. And in 2 weeks, we have the webinar on negotiations with partners and donors, which we highly recommend. Another thing, we have an evaluation form because, of course, we'd like to improve our webinars. So please help us with that. You can also find that in the pop-up when you leave this webinar. This was it for today. I hope you all have a very nice day, and we see each other in our next webinar.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you all for joining, and hope to see you soon again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.